Hi, everybody, and welcome to Grow the Goodness in You. My name is Quiggy. I am your host. I am a self realization coach, a meditation teacher, and my mission with this podcast is to inspire the best in you, to inspire you, the listeners, to take responsibility for your own health, for your own healing, for your own happiness, to make the world a better place, starting with your own. I am so excited to be here. I'm so pumped. This has been a long time coming, and I've been experimenting and playing with different roles and ways of delivering my strengths and my messages, and I feel really like I'm in the right place here with this, and I'm so happy to share it with you. I want to start each episode with a moment to just pause, a mindfulness practice. Perhaps you're driving a car or operating machinery. In that case, don't stop what you're doing. But if you are walking, if you are seated, take a moment to physically pause, but otherwise just mentally, emotionally pause what you're thinking about. And let's just take a few deep breaths in through the nose and out of the mouth, in through the nose, out of the mouth. And one more nice big deep breath just like that. Just arriving a little bit more fully into this present moment. We move so fast in our lives and often run on autopilot. And a big intention in the delivery of the messages and the insights in this podcast is for us to slow down so that we can start to integrate the inspiration to grow into our best selves. And so I want to start by introducing the title of this podcast. It's a subtitle of my umbrella organization, if you will, Quig Cultivation, and it's Grow the Goodness in You. And the belief originates in what I would say is the truth that we all are inherently good on the inside. And, granted, we are traumatized and have our ass kicked, and we're living in conditions that aren't always ideal. And so we grow up and we're conditioned to cake on all this armor that can cause a lot of the pain and the suffering and the divisiveness and the even the violence that exists in the world today. And yet I believe at our cores, as the Dalai Lama says, we all just want to be loved. And we all want to avoid suffering as much as possible. If you look at any human that you encounter on a daily basis, you can recognize that common humanity that we all share. And so in a world that is particularly divisive right now, our egos are inflamed, and there's a lot of in-group, out-group, and in some parts of the world that leads to violence. And in our home in America, there's a lot of emotional violence, if you will. And I think in order to dig ourselves out of this me versus you, us versus them mindset, we have to realize the love within our hearts, the power within our hands, and grow the goodness inside of ourselves. So what does that mean? I think, again, on a basic level, we all just want to be loved. We all have the capacity for love, for giving love. And yet so much of what we do in a divided world is fear really trying to manipulate in order to perhaps get that love that we all want. And so at our core, what I believe in is that if we realize the goodness within ourselves, if we look within ourselves as individuals rather than trying to control or manipulate the world outside of ourselves and giving our power to others around us as if they determine our well-being and as if changing them will make us feel safe. If we turn inward and recognize the good within ourselves and focus on cultivating that, happiness is within reach with all of us, for all of us. And I believe in a culture that is, in order for us to work together as a collective, we have to cultivate healthy individualism. And so that means looking within, reflecting within oneself, what your strengths are, what your hopes are, what your dreams are, and equally so what your fears are, what your limiting beliefs are, what gets in your way. Where do you cause yourself pain? Where do you cause others pain? Taking responsibility and accountability for the full spectrum of your humanness without shaming ourselves, because we're all imperfect and we all fuck up. We all make mistakes. We all hurt other people. And the intention is not to perfect ourselves or to pretend like you're only going to be good all the time. You're only going to act in alignment with your highest self at all times. That's just not the reality. It's to learn to love ourselves in our fullness, to acknowledge and take responsibility for the shadow parts of ourselves, and to acknowledge equally so and take responsibility for the greatness in each of us, and to cultivate that. To cultivate skills to be able to manage and shift out of habits that are destructive and egotistical in nature, and to cultivate, to feed the goodness in ourselves. When we do that, we can grow into the best version of ourselves, the healthiest version of ourselves, the happiest version of ourselves. And we all deserve happiness. That's a bottom line as far as I'm concerned. And so what I want to encourage in you in this podcast is reflection of oneself, a willingness to start to take responsibility for oneself. I think it's very easy to think that the world around us is fully responsible for ourselves. I think we all have that journey growing up, and ultimately growth and healing is a self-responsible. I'm going to say this a million times, and you'll find that I'm repetitive in this podcast, and that's just how I love to deliver my messages. And repetition is good because it will hammer it home. We have to take responsibility. Healing is a self-responsible endeavor. Growth is a self-responsible endeavor. So my encouragement here is to, in the messages that I deliver in this podcast, is to reflect on yourself, to be honest with yourself, and to love all of it. At the baseline of a healthy desire for change is love and acceptance. We have to love and accept and honor where we are. Again, without that shaming, without the shaming for being a certain way, accepting where you're at, and then setting the intention to grow into whoever you want to become. That's going to make you feel good living this really beautiful life that we have been gifted. And I believe that when we grow, when we focus on ourselves, when we grow this love and this power and this goodness within ourselves, and whatever that looks like for you, when we do that as individuals, we talk about the cup of self-love. When you fill your own cup up, it is overpouring. There's plenty to share. When your cup is empty, which is I think how many of us are living our lives these days, or at least trained to live our lives, taught to live our lives. With an empty cup, we have no room to share with anyone and no room for ourselves to feel full. So the invitation is to let this podcast be an opportunity to focus on yourself, to inspire the best in yourself, to fill your cup up. And ultimately, the bigger mission for me and for you is to make the world around you a better place by starting with yourself, by starting with your own inner world. Because when your cup is full, it pours out abundantly, and people can enjoy the fruits of your own inner work. So I think we can often jump to serving others before serving ourselves. And it's a beautiful intention to want to give, and I want to give, and I want you to give. We have to give to ourselves first. We have to grow within ourselves in order to have the capacity to really show up in the world in an empowered and loving way. And that's what I want to inspire in you. I want to help you and really help myself through this creative outlet, through this standing in my strength and my power and sharing my love. I want us all to grow. And I think when we all grow together, the world can be saved. If we're talking about, the trajectory we're on here, and, we can move beyond survival into thrival, as I like to call it. We can thrive, and we deserve to thrive. So I want that for you. I want that for me. I want that for all of us. And that's what is going to happen here when you listen along on this podcast. I'd like to leave each sort of message and insight with some reflection questions. And so this podcast is really going to follow along the coaching modality, which is really turning so I'm going to deliver my insights in a way that feels good for me as a teacher with my own language. And, I encourage you to reflect and not to just absorb everything as if it's truth, but really reflect what I'm saying within yourself and ask, does this land with me? Is this true for me? If there's resistance, am I willing to perhaps push the envelope a little bit and challenge my preconceived notions? Ultimately, this is intended to be a reflective exercise. So I want to leave you with a few questions to reflect on with yourself at the end of each episode. And I encourage you to pause, take a moment to think and reflect. If you like to journal on these questions. If you want to share with a partner, an accountability buddy who you can practice this reflection with. However this works for you, all of this is a make it your own experiment, and I want to invite this self-reflection. So in terms of the concept today of growing the goodness in you, what are your strengths? What are your gifts? What do you have to share with the world? What gifts do you share on a daily basis already? And what gifts do you want to cultivate and share more freely moving forward? So take a moment to reflect on those. And I'd also like to add, in line with the energy of a coaching format, actionable steps that you can take, because coaching and the format of this will be inspiration, reflection, and then ultimately inspired action. We can think and talk about these things all day long, all we want, but if we don't move forward in life differently, if we don't show up differently, if we continue to operate and function entirely on autopilot, well, nothing really will change. So grow is an action-oriented word. Grow requires not just taking responsibility, being honest with your reflection, but also forward movement. So in encouraging the forward movement based on these reflection questions, thinking of the things that you already do, the gifts that you already share on a daily basis, how can you lean into that, into sharing those gifts? How can you be more present with and more intentional about sharing those gifts that you already share consistently moving forward today, this week? And these gifts don't have to be like, I quit my job and I'm going to start a nonprofit somewhere in the world. Your gift can be smiling at the checkout counter at the grocery store, at the person who operates that. A smile can change a person's day, and that can be a gift that you can give. Gifts can be small, they can be big. The more intentional, the more beautiful they can be. So don't feel like gift means that you have to change the world in one false swoop. You can change someone's day with a big ass smile or by just being silly and making a joke. On top of that, second actionable item, what can I do in terms of the gifts that I want to cultivate and share more often, more freely? What's a step that I can take this week, today, in order to move in the direction of sharing that more freely? So that's that first episode. A little nerving for me. I'm set up here with a microphone and a webcam and a light for the first time, and trying to make sure that this doesn't sound terrible and that you can feel my energy and my passion. And I just want to send so much love and appreciation to you for listening and for honoring yourself, and for a willingness to step into the best version of yourself, not just for others, but for your own happiness, because we all deserve, in this gift of life that we have, really a temporary existence. We deserve to make the most out of it. So I want you to make the most out of it. And if you want to too, please listen along. You can subscribe here on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. Follow along for little previews on Instagram. You can holler at me via my website, via Instagram. I really want to make this interactive. I've got a lot of ideas for episodes, but if there's something that comes to mind that you want me to touch on and talk about and dissect and give a take on, please reach out. Let me know what that is. I want this to serve you and the greater good. I love you. Have a beautiful now.